A very good evening to you this weekend. It is Saturday, the 8th day of February 2014. Many thanks for joining us in our bulletin tonight. We will remind you, of course, that KTN Job Center is back tonight. So if 2014 is the year you have decided this is the year you're going to get yourself into employment, well then do get in touch with us at KTN Job Center. That's on Twitter. We also have a Facebook page, that's KTN Job Center, or simply send us an email, ktnjobcenter@standardmedia.co.ke. And Najma Ismail could be getting in touch with you to make sure that your dreams come true. And by the way, many of you will remember Edward Siko. He contacted us sometime last year. Najma Ismail did his story. He actually spoke with our HR director. He is with us now. In fact, he's probably still in our newsrooms as we speak. So please do not hesitate to get in touch with us, and we will definitely be making sure we can make your dreams come true this year. Our sign language interpreter tonight, of course, joins us as well to make sure that the deaf can hear. Many thanks for joining us. But let's get to our top stories this evening. And we start off in Bungoma County, which is reeling in the wake of yet another spate of attacks. Now, shock has gripped Lutonyi village in the outskirts of Kimilili town, where the latest gang raid has left 2 dead and scores of others injured. KTN's Will Kistanyabo reports.
Residents of Bungoma are a worried lot. The events of last night bring to mind a similar chain of occurrences from last year. On Friday night, 2 villages, Lutonyi and Kamusinga, came under attack. Eyewitnesses say there were 2 groups of attackers, each group comprising 5 men. They descended on the villagers, hacking men and raping women. 2 people were killed, while 9 others are now at Kimilili Hospital, nursing injuries of varying degrees.
Wamefalia hizi raincoat, ni kama wako na bunduki, fimbo na panga.
The attackers' motives are unknown. The men, who were reportedly dressed in combat gear, took nothing of value from the victims. Only a few days ago, Crescent Buyobo and his son were laying down plans for the future. Now he is planning a funeral for his son, one of 2 people killed in Friday's attack.
Ingia ndani tukapata huyu mtoto ni yeye. Amekatakatwa, iko kwa mochari hapo ndani.
The chilling attack has sparked fears of the re-emergence of a killer gang that rained terror on Bungoma County residents last year. At least 17 people lost their lives, with over 100 people sustaining injuries in the hands of the machete-wielding gangsters.
Kulikuwa na kisa kama hiki 2 weeks ago. Hapa Kwirero walishika mtu na uniform ya police with the numbers. Na hata hakuna saizi kufikia hivi leo, hakuna chochote chenye kimetendeka paka saa hii ya kwamba kuna kitu chochote kimetendeka, ama wamemkamata mwali fulani, ama huyo askari wamemfuta, ama kitu gani.
Naweza pika nduru hapa na kufika mpaka muta yako itakapotimisa, na uwezi kuona mtu yoyote. Hata majirani hapana toka.
And just a day after President Uhuru Kenyatta launched the Security Sector Rapid Results Initiative meant to curb insecurity across the country, residents of Bungoma worry about what the future will bring. Will Kistanyabo, KTN.
Let's take you to the coast region now, where Islamic leaders from multiple mosques in Mombasa held a day-long conference to devise action plans that will tackle the spreading radicalization and extremism in the region. The Kenya Muslim National Advisory Council says it invited leaders from 100 mosques, but some were said to have stayed away for fear or reprisal from the extremists. And as Ferdinand Omondi reports, the stage is set for a jihad against jihad.
125 in the dock. Several of them are minors. The charges: engaging in terrorism activities at the Musa Mosque in Mombasa. They will spend 5 days in remand with grown men suspected to be sympathetic to terrorism. The role of minors in terror remains a hot topic, and the manner in which police handled Sunday's operation when they stormed the mosque is still attracting heated reactions.
There's nowhere in the world ambapo ideological war has been won through force. Hakuna.
You see, this is a group which was properly prepared for war, you see, to terrorize. And if the government allows that to continue, then it will be chaos, not only in Mombasa, but in the entire country.
If the government of Kenya is sincere about tackling the problem of violence, extremism, radicalization, and the rest, then the government should not be seen as if it is retaliating, but the government should be seen as applying the law.
But on this day, a different voice joined the fray. The Council of Imams and Preachers of Kenya, while equally disappointed with police for storming Masjid Musa, are wondering what children were doing there in the first place.
Inapasa watoto kama wale wawe madrasa, haswa siku ya Jumapili kama ile ambayo ilioshikwa, ilikuwa wawe msikitini madrasa wakisoma dini ya haki na ya ukweli, dini ya Uislamu.
Parents claim their children were attracted to the Sunday seminar when organizers promised attendants a feast of biryani, a popular rice delicacy here. But critics of the seminar believe the feast was a smokescreen to lure many minors before the real agenda took place, which police maintain was the radicalization of young minds. This notion brings in the role of parents in guiding their children. CIPK feels some parents may have placed too much faith in preachers, some of whom are now pawning the children to dangerous practices.
Kuna watu wanawatumia hawa watoto kwa maslahi yao na agenda zao za siri wao wenyewe wanazozijua. Wajua hata ukimwona shekhe au kasisi au padri au nani yeye watoa mawaidha, lakini kuna wakati na yeye pia ataka apawe mawaidha pia. Waambie bwana, mimi naona wewe mzee au wewe shekhe au wewe padri au pastor, hii njia si sawa sawa. Mimi naona hapa kidogo kuna kasoro fulani.
Masjid Musa and Masjid Sakina have gained notoriety in recent times in the war on terror. Practically every disruption that has rocked Mombasa in the past year has involved faithful of Masjid Musa. Sakina Mosque followed suit recently when a section of radical youth reportedly ejected Sheikh Mohammed and his leaders and took over the reins. Police believe both mosques are now sympathetic to terror groups and radical preachers, and CIPK has been on the receiving end for their perceived soft stance.
Tujiribuni tutafute njia ya kuweza kutatua jambo hili kuliko kuanza kulaumu na kuanza kuona viongozi wa kidini wapita kuwaita wanafiki, kuwaita wasaliti. Hilo sio suluhisho.
County Commissioner Nelson Marwa also accused Mombasa leaders of playing to the public gallery instead of offering leadership. A long-standing discussion to form a new committee to run the Musa Mosque has failed to launch. Now they want to try that again.
The Orange Democratic Movement contestants Ababu Namwamba and Elizabeth Ongoro have warned that they won't accept an election process that only serves as an endorsement of those chosen by the party leadership. But even as Ababu's camp directed their thinly veiled criticism against opponents in the Paul Otoma camp, the party's elections board raised the red flag over indecent campaigns in the run-up to the polls.
The group, now referred to as the counterforce in the Orange Party, were in Nakuru at a delegates meeting to sell their joint ticket. The camp, whose team leader is Turkana Governor Josephat Nanok, with Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho as second in command, is to repulse the Paul Otoma lineup, which is alleged to be backed by party leader Raila Odinga.
Insist that we want this to be an election and not a selection.
This team is a team that believes in the democratic ideals of the party ODM.
This must be an election and not a selection. And by the way, all of us be warned to stop dragging the name of the party leader in this contest.
Insiders say that Budalangi MP Ababu Namwamba and nominated Senator Elizabeth Ongoro are in talks for one of them to step down to a lesser position and leave the other to contest for the Secretary General's post.
This team does not want to break the party. We want to remain united. As you can see, I am right next to my competitor. Ndolo is right next to his competitor.
That in a practice game, teammates do not break each other's legs. In fact, they play so carefully because they know At the end of the day, you will need all your teammates fit for the real game.
The camp has, among others, Aldas MP Adan Kainan as Deputy Chairman aspirant, Bomachoge Chache MP Simon Ogari as Treasurer, nominated MP Isaac Maura, slotted for Deputy Secretary General's post, and former Makadara MP Ruben Dole as Organizing Secretary. At Orange House, the party's election board has raised the red flag over the charged negative campaigns by the aspirants. The underhand tackles jolted the board into a meeting that resolved to crack the whip on errant aspirants.
We have taken note of these members who keep saying that we know the list, and I think the board deliberated extensively about that matter yesterday, and they shall be communicated to accordingly to desist from making such comments which tends to discredit the process.
We want to really tell the candidates that we want them to behave and abide by the code of conduct so that we don't have any fracas anywhere, and we want to look like we are a party that can really do a free and fair exercise.
The board has disqualified 7 aspirants citing non-compliance. Those whose candidatures were revoked were neither delegates nor life members to the party. The disqualified are party chair position aspirant Isaac Musao Mwilu, George Nyongesa, who was eyeing the position of Secretary for Publicity and Information, Susan Washeke aspiring for Secretary for Environment, Ambassador Tabitha Sei contesting for International Affairs Secretary position, Deputy Secretary General aspirant Paul Kiaka, and Boaz Waruku, who was eyeing for the position of Devolved Government Secretary. All disqualified for not being ODM delegates. Anthony Oluoch, aspiring for Secretary Legal Affairs, was equally struck off from contesting after vetting of contestants.
The receipt that he gave us to show that he was a life member, receipt number 18704, we realize has lapsed when he left the party and read on a Ford Kenya ticket for MP for Mathare constituency in the last general elections.
Nonetheless, the party has set up an appeals tribunal to hear disputes that may arise from the election process. Samugina, KTN.
Let's take you to Kisumu town for controversy of a different kind. Now, a statue that was put up by the Sikh community in that town has drawn so much heat that it caused the heckling of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga today. It is almost unheard of for Raila to be shouted down by youth in that region, but the statue has already triggered 2 days of demonstrations by residents and religious leaders. They claim that it was an idol of a deity and should not have been erected in such a public place. Raila had gone there to try and diffuse tensions over the issue, but was forced to leave when the youth refused to calm down. The hecklers later destroyed the statue. Deputy President William Ruto says he's thankful to God for prayers answered in the seemingly wobbling cases against him and President Uhuru Kenyatta at the International Criminal Court. Ruto was speaking in Sotik constituency, Bomet County, where speakers supported calls to have the ICC cases against Ruto and Uhuru dropped. They cited the challenges being faced by prosecutor Fatu Bensouda in getting witnesses and evidence as proof that the cases were falling apart.
That's us to fulfill and honor their pledges. Yesterday, we were
Leo Okambo mwenye alipokuja Kenya alisema he has a very tight case against Kenyans leaders. Sindio? Akasema he will use Kenya as an example. Leo amefungua mdomo. Amesema ukweli. Ati ya kwamba alisukumwa kwa hii kesi.
Mambo ya ugatuzi tutashirikiana na county governments tuhakikishe ya kwamba mandate waliopatiwa na katiba wanatekeleza. Tumeketi chini ya mwaka mmoja, serikali ya Jubilee imetekeleza upande wake.
Former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka has now revealed that Jubilee operatives sabotaged his endorsement for the top job by former President Mwai Kibaki in the run-up to the 2013 presidential election. Kalonzo told a crowd in Makueni today that some powerful operatives within the Kibaki administration worked tirelessly to block him from succeeding President Kibaki, having been his deputy for 5 years. Kalonzo was replying to a comment from Kieni MP Kanini Kega, who had thrown a barb at the court coalition. Kalonzo, Kega and other leaders were speaking at the burial ceremony for the late Philip Mutuse Mwengi, who's a father to Dr. Alfred Mutua's Chief of Staff, Mwengi Mutuse. The former VP told the mourners that apparent political differences between the Machakos governor and the Machakos Senator Johnston Muthama will be resolved within the next 2 weeks.
Tulewa na political parties. Sisi kama Jubilee, kusema ukweli, sisi tumegawana TNA, URP na vyama vingine vyote ambao tulikuwa tumeungana. Kwa nini wakati inafika ni code, jameni wanasema ni ODM peke yake? Kwani Wiper na tip hakuna pahali wako?
Wakati President Kibaki alipita Machakos, alimwitishia governor Kibonda kula, kamwitishia governor Mutua. Na mimi akasema hivi, huyu bwana tumefanya kazi na yeye kwa ajabu kabisa. Na yeye kama vice president wangu, munisaidie sasa tumuinue achukue nikitoka mamlakani. He had endorsed his vice president. Lakini what happened? Kabla ya kufika Kitui na governor Mutua huyu being a media person akaweka mara moja. Akaambia wananchi wa Kenya Kibaki ameendorse his vice president. It was killed in the kitchen cabinet ya TNA. Yes. Kwa hivyo mambo mengine.
Let's stay with matters politics. A section of leaders from Western Kenya have once again asked President Uhuru Kenyatta to appoint the Amani coalition leader Musalia Mudavadi into the cabinet. But President Uhuru Kenyatta said those asking to be included in the Jubilee government were missing the point. Patrick Amimo reports.
The president was here to preside over the 25th anniversary of Musalia's father, the late Moses Budamba Mudavadi, who was a powerful minister during former President Moi's regime. Indeed, the late Mudavadi was a kingmaker in Western Kenya politics during the one-party regime and was often referred to as the King of Mululu. Uhuru's visit to Vihiga came against the background of growing speculation that the Jubilee government plans to appoint the UDF leader Musalia Mudavadi to cabinet.
Watu wasikwambie tu angalia Waluhya, mpa Waluhya kazi, fanya nani Waluhya. Yes. We are the second largest tribe kwa your tribe. Kwa na yule mtu unaweza kuingia kwake, na mimi nataka kukumbusha. Siku ya mazishi ya rafiki yangu Kichuki, ulisimama na ukasema mama ya kwako, mama wetu wa taifa.
Yako kama jamii tumeachwa nje. Hatuna representation mzuri katika serikali yako. Ndio mheshimiwa Noah Kesa amesema hatukukupigia kura. Hiyo ni ukweli. Lakini sasa ulipokuwa rais, wewe ni rais wa Wakenya wote, sio wale waliokupigia kura peke yake. Tunaomba watoto wetu tuone pia wakiweko katika serikali ili tujisikie kwamba hata sisi tuko ndani ya serikali yako.
But President Uhuru was of the view that the calls by leaders were misplaced since he has formed an inclusive government.
Mimi niko tayari kufanya kazi na viongozi wote. Tuungane kwa serikali kuu. Tufanye kazi pia na serikali za county. Tutendee hawa wananchi. Kwa sababu miaka mitano sio mingi. Tunaweza kukaa hapa tubishane, mwishowe mwananchi akose yale ambaye tumemwahidi.
Rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta ako pale ambaye ako kwa sababu ya umoja ya watu wake na umoja ya watu ambao walimpigia kura. Nyinyi ukitaka wakati ifike ambao utasimama hapa na kuuliza tafadhali tupatie hii, nukae umoja wenyu na uweke hiyo umoja kwa debe.
The president took the chance to weigh in on the school fees issue, which has set parents against public school heads. He has issued a stern warning to head teachers who are levying extra fees, saying they risk prosecution.
Yule cabinet secretary wako education, Professor Kaimenyi, ametoa amri. Lakini tunajua ya kwamba amri hiyo ikitoka kwako mwenyewe, ya kwamba karo ya shule isiongezwe, especially on a day that we are celebrating a great educationist like Moses Mudavadi. Nafikiri wazazi walio hapa na Kenya nzima watafurahi.
Kuna njia na kuna taratibu ya vile unaweza kuongeza fees, lakini sio muende mkae huko nyuma na mkubaliana na BOG hapo. So those things are illegal, na vile waziri alisema jana ndio msimamo wa serikali ya kwamba mambo hayo yote isimamishwe mpaka tuyaangalie watoto wetu waweze kusoma.
The president urged leaders from Western to emulate the late Mudavadi and stop feeding Kenyans on empty talk. Both former presidents Daniel Moi and Mwai Kibaki, through their representatives Gideon Moi and Nderitu Mureithi respectively, paid tribute to the contributions of the late Moses Mudavadi in education. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Let's move away from politics and to a story now that is bound to generate some conversation. Now, in order to fight HIV and AIDS, and in order to fight sexual abuse and sex exploitation, the United Nations is pushing for the decriminalization of prostitution. The trade has always been surrounded by stigma, preventing sex workers from seeking crucial medical services or indeed legal services when they're abused by police or their clients. But as Catherine Omondo reports, Kenya's conservative nature has complicated the debate on decriminalizing prostitution.
When most Kenyans arrive home and sit down for dinner, Liz is getting ready for work. Her job is highly dependent on her looks.
These people who are saying no, sex work is illegal, sex work is just what, they are our official clients.
If you were given an option to do anything else or to work as anyone else, would you change your job?
I won't. Maybe when I become old, that I'm not able to walk out. But as much on the other side, I might prefer to have a secondary income. But my primary is sex working.
She feels it's time commercial sex work is decriminalized.
We are human beings. We are their sisters. This is where we earn our living.
In late 2012, the United Nations Development Programme proposed the decriminalization of prostitution.
The notion behind decriminalization is to actually ensure that as we are developing and implementing programs, and especially HIV prevention programs towards sex workers, it ensures that it takes a rights-based approach.
When I was new in the industry of sex working, I met with this city council who really, in the side of tea room, I was calling with a client there to sleep, but he just pushed me. And then he took me to a street where we had sex without a condom.
When one arm of the government, the Ministry of Health, provides condoms for sex work to combat HIV or to combat infectious diseases, as they are called, STIs and the sort, another arm of the government, which is the law enforcement, comes and takes away this particular items, condoms, from sex workers, then it's counterproductive to whatever public health approach.
The Penal Code Article 154 says any woman who knowingly lives on the earnings of prostitution or is proved to have exercised control, direction or influence over the movements of a prostitute in such a manner as to show that she is aiding her prostitution with any person is guilty of a felony. There is no clause, however, in the Constitution that explicitly outlaws commercial sex work. However, under the Bill of Rights, every Kenyan has a right to access to health care and has a right to be protected against any kind of abuse.
And actually, when sex workers are arrested, they're not arrested under that specific clause. Most of them will be arrested under the city bylaws and charged with loitering with intent to commit prostitution.
I have a case study of myself. I was arrested. It was 5 a.m. in the morning. I was on my way to home. Because in the morning, how can you define one is a sex worker. The street is busy. I was wearing well with my trouser. I was not naked. I was not wearing a short sleeve skirt. I was not wearing an open top. I was just walking home. And then they arrested me. And so I was taken to court. When the city askari was writing down our names, and they have to write before they handed it over to judge. So I saw him writing down, he has arrested at 1 a.m. Then the charges were read. Flani, charged with loitering with the intention of prostitution. Guilty or not guilty? Not guilty. We stood strong, and they were shocked when we won the case.
The charge for loitering with the intention of prostitution will fetch a fine of 1,000 shillings if the woman pleads guilty.
And we have told them, do not plead guilty, do not bribe your way out, do not, let them prove. Let us go to the court and let them prove that you are loitering. And we have had 100% success, and they have not been able to prove any of the cases. And now we are going to sue them for unlawful arrest.
In a decriminalization setting, which is what we are calling for, both parties will be protected.
In legalization, we are talking about officially acknowledging existence of sex workers and making them pay tax and making them have a record of some sort, which to us will be very problematic.
In February 2012, the then city mayor George Aladwa found himself in a bind when he was first reported to have said that he would legalize sex work, only to recant his statement hours later following sharp criticism from members of the public.
We should find a long-term solution.
KTN sought the views of top county official Christopher Hayemba, but he refused to comment on the matter, saying that the city council will give a comprehensive statement in a week's time. So what we did instead was go out to the streets and ask Kenyans what they feel about decriminalization of prostitution.
We just like living in pretense that it doesn't exist while it does exist. If that law is removed, then they introduce taxes for that particular business. We are going to generate a lot of income out of that.
As a Christian, I don't think prostitution should be legal.
If you want money and you are getting customers, that means there is a situation of a willing seller and willing buyer. So it should not be removed. The only thing that should be there is that because it is a trade, the prostitute should be paying tax.
If you hear a letter M, a man, men, they are working everywhere. Priest, whoever. We have so many of them. From the government, from churches. Some could come and remove their petals, put it on the table. They could give you a phone to receive.
Let us remove the speck in our own eyes before we remove the speck in someone else's, and not claim that sex work is an immoral thing. There is transactional sex, which exists in very many different levels. We know very well that people exchange sexual favors and gifts for other sexual favors and gifts. And it exists in very many different levels, but people still do not want to talk about it. That, in essence, is sex work. What sex workers are coming out to say is that if that is existing, then why are we treated as criminals?
We should standardize these bylaws, and the ones that are not in line with the Constitution really have to go.
Stakeholders are planning to sit down with government officials and discuss possible policies on the matter. But just as was seen during the constitutional referendum campaigns, matters touching on morality have often proved to be hot potatoes in Kenya, and few politicians ever want to be involved. Catherine Omwanto, KTN.
Thanks for that, Catherine. Definitely a story and an issue that will continue to generate conversation, getting tweets about it already. Levi Conness, you say it will always be there. Decriminalize it and tax it heavily. Counties could even determine their own taxes regarding that. Well, keep your comments coming in and we'll continue to sample them. But even as we take a short break, I want to show you what you can look forward to in your Sunday Standard that's coming up tomorrow. And I want you to take a look at that headline. We have been focusing on this issue for the better part of this week, taking a look at radicalization, particularly at the coast. And tomorrow you might want to know why the coast youths, let me take a look at that, adore their radical imams, and why it is that they no longer trust their regular religious leaders. And of course, all of that, their poverty, of course, being a great issue, and unemployment as well. And if you want more details on the story we carried earlier on about Raila getting heckled in Kisumu as youths brought down a statue claiming it shouldn't have been there in the first place, please do take a look at that. It'll be on page 8 tomorrow. And children are back to school now. What's happening with drug use in schools? That'll also be in your paper tomorrow, pages 20 to 21. Radicalization being a huge story that we're following, especially after what happened at Masjid Musa earlier on this week. So make sure you get your copy of the Standard on Sunday tomorrow and get a look at all those stories in greater detail. For now, we take a short break, but you know what's coming up after the break. It's Job Center, and yes, it's back.
What can 2,000 shillings do? The elderly speak out.
We are going to be firm on ensuring that public resources are spent as is required by the Constitution and legally, so that we can achieve the development that we have set out for ourselves in the country. The greatest threat to development in our country is corruption and theft, and thus those have no place in the Jubilee administration.
You are watching KTN Weekend Prime.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, just days after President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration pumped in 12 billion shillings into the Elderly and Orphans Fund, a section of the beneficiaries have now said the 2,000 shillings they receive monthly for upkeep is not enough. Some of the elderly persons argue that they need more money for support of their grandchildren and other needs. Take a look at this.
At the heart of Nyeri County in Mwaiga, 80-year-old Cecilia Nguju goes on with the daily activities. She stays alone. Poverty has separated her from her children and grandchildren, and every month she says she has to find a way to pay 500 shillings for this single room she lives in. Sometimes the little she gets from her small grocery business is stolen. But Cecilia has a reason to smile at the end of every month.
Sasa mimi napataga hiyo pesa ya serikali, lakini inanisaidia kwa maana mimi niko na tabu sana.
The money is sufficient for her upkeep. Still in the neighborhood, 72-year-old Mary Wairimu relies purely on the 2,000 shillings to raise her 6 grandchildren after her children passed on. She says the money is already spent before she lays her hands on it. Mary's sentiments resonate with the hundreds of elderly persons who assemble outside the Nyeri post office to receive their upkeep. While others line up under the scorching sun, others find a spot to rest their heels.
Kuzumama ama kukaa chini kwa mujaga hatuwezi kuondoka. Wengine ni wazee, wengine ni wagonjwa, wengine wanaletwa na wheelchair.
Mimi nateseka kwa sababu pesa hizi zetu tunasaidiwa na serikali yetu tukufu, ilichelewa sana kwa miezi 4. Tulipewa mwezi wa 8 mpaka sasa. Hivyo na tunateseka ni njaa, na mimi ningeomba serikali yetu tukufu itusaidie kwa hiyo pesa, hata tuongezee kwa hiyo pesa.
The program started in 2007 to help the vulnerable and the old who cannot afford their basic needs. Recently, President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration added another 12 billion shillings to support the program. However, even those who have taken up the responsibility to take care of the old have pointed out certain flaws in the program.
Let's be consistent when we're giving them. If it's 2,000 a month, let it be 2,000 a month. At the same time, there's also that issue of transparency. And let's not have nepotism.
Ian Wafula, KTN.
Time for sports news now. After months and years of complaining about lack of enough competitions, Kenyan sprinters will this year have a wide range of events to choose from. However, the inaugural IAAF World Relays Championships in Bahamas in the month of May is top on the priority list for the athletes who kicked off their season build-up today at the Nairobi West Prison Grounds.
The Kenyan sprinters are already sharpening their skills ahead of the Commonwealth Games, Africa Championships, the World Cup, as well as the World Relays coming up later this year. After representing Kenya at the New Delhi Commonwealth Games 4 years ago, Grace Kidaki was among the sprinters who turned up at the Nairobi West Prisons grounds for the first sprinters build-up that will be followed by another weekend meeting on the 22nd of this month. Though well aware of the stiff competition at the global stage, Kidaki remains confident that her experience will take her places.
For real, this year it's for us, because most of the years, sprinters, it has been, you have to meet the time, you have to be in shape, but now, as in May, we shall have the first team to go to Bahamas.
Vincent Kosgei is the other short distance athlete looking forward to a bright season.
Sai tunaangalia hiyo World Championship relay. Hata sijawahi sikia hiyo, hii ni mara yangu ya kwanza, na mimi naona sasa kama Kenya Athletics Kenya wako ni serious na hii, mimi naona tukienda huko tutafaulu.
The country's athletics governing body AKA says it's planning to take a strong team to Bahamas.
Because our plan is to enter in all the relays that will be run in Bahamas, that is 4x1. 4x2, 4x4, 4x8 and 4x15.
Kenya holds the record in the 4x1500 meters relay. Lane Washira, KTN.
Well, we thank you so much for watching our bulletin tonight. It is indeed a pleasure to always have you with us and for your feedback on all the stories that we air. And if you are like Ben Kitili, who I know is drowning his sorrows somewhere, you might want to tune in to the show that's coming right after this. It's KTN's Russia African music. Zena and Mashumbe are all set to bring you the very best of African music. And today I'm hearing a lot of Mugithi, so it should be fun. So Ben Kitili and all other Arsenal fans, Russia is up next. Special one just for you. Had to do that. Thank you for watching our bulletin tonight. My name is Yvonne Okwara. We'll see you tomorrow.